Hey, I'm sitting here asking myself if I am at all remotely ready for this, but I think I'm ready at this point in my life to talk about, um, I guess you would say, what it's like to grow up without your father. It's a very, I think, I think it's something that is sadly common enough, and I think a lot of statistics will tell you that it is a detriment to the household. But so the first thing I remember being younger, I would probably say would be going to preschool. My grandfather, some people, Grandpa George, Grandpa Hernandez, whatever you want to call him. To me, he was just Grandpa. He would take me to this preschool, and I just always remember feeling a little bit more timid than the other kids. And it's being a father now, I understand it, but the emotional impact, whether you realize what it is or not as a child, is there. It is, it's like having a cut, not knowing where you got it from. And, and it just affects your confidence, you know? Kids are, younger kids, preschool, kindergarten, grade school in general, they can be very ruthless and they don't hold their punches. You know, they're kids are innocent. They don't mean to. They don't understand how cruel they are. But I was teased a lot, questioned a lot, and then when I couldn't answer why I didn't, have a father, I didn't know I didn't have a father, whatever the case may be, um, kids kind of like exile you. They treat you differently, and it's a very maybe because they can't wrap their mind around it, so you're different. But it's a very I just remember being a sad kid, always just never having a real place. I'm lucky my grandfather was there for me because my grandparents, not in general, but my grandfather. I remember around that age going to we would walk to his church, or we would walk to the grocery store and walk back with groceries where they lived. And I guess you would say he was my main male figure that I had to look up to. To this day, I still look up to him as a just an amazing person. You if you ask me what a perfect person was, or an ideal father figure, or just a good man, um, my grandfather is number one. I don't idolize or look up to any human beings on this earth. I don't put anybody on a pedestal, but that's one. That's definitely one. Um, and then I remember when I was at some point we all moved. We moved to a different city. It was the city right over, but we moved from, like, I guess you would say, like, a I don't know, a house or a condo duplex type of thing, whatever. I don't know. We moved to an apartment complex, and while moving, a couple things happened between then. Um, I never knew my father. I didn't even know. I didn't even know that a majority of my life that he was in prison until it came up. Like, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know. So just putting that out there. I didn't know it was missing. It was not talked about. That's what I remember anyway. So anyway, my mom. I think that's around the time between kindergarten and first grade. Well, usually you're 4 or 5. She met my I guess you could say stepdad, my brother's dad. And I remember. I remember there was a transition between her meeting him and us moving, and my and I think we kind of lived with him. It's such a blur, but all I know for sure is that my grandparents moved to a smaller place, an apartment complex. And while this was happening, like I recall it was during the move, my grandfather had a stroke. And, when you're a kid, they just don't want you there. You want to know what's going on, and they just keep you out of the loop, or they just don't include you, which I understand because I have kids now, so I get that. I really do. But I always felt like I don't know. I always felt like me even when I was a kid. Like I always felt like an adult in my head, guess you could say. Um, yeah, but my grandfather had a stroke, and he was paralyzed on his left side, so he couldn't do the things he used to do. But I did still spend a lot of time there. But the reason but that's not why that's important. Um, Somewhere between um, my mom and I living kind of, I guess, which would be my stepdad eventually, um, we ended up moving to the same apartment complex as my grandparents. So this is important because at one point, I remember I was walking with my mom from, I don't know if we were walking from my grandmother's place to our apartment or from across the street getting groceries because the grocery store was like literally right across the street to our place. But there was a guy on a bike. I remember that. There was a guy on a bike, and he caught, he saw my mom, and he drove into like a pole, or he hit like the staircases that they have that go spiral up to the complexes. And then my mom, I remember distinctly, my mom was like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I'm like, "How does she know this guy? What's going on? This is so random, so weird." And she like, "Oh, this is your father." And I was like, "What?" Like blew my mind. Like, yeah, this is your dad. And it turned out like by some weird, I don't know, fate, whatever you want to call it, that I lived in the same complex. Not only my grandparents lived there, but my dad lived on the third floor, real close to me. I I I sadly I just have a handful of memories with him. Um, Nothing bad, nothing. I mean, I guess you say average. I don't know. I remember spending time at his apartment. I remember staying over one night. I remember he had like a old school Nintendo. I remember it was my birthday and he brought like some Batman pajamas and a Transformer toy to me for one of my birthdays. And I remember the last time I saw him, as far as I recall, is that I don't know what my mom was doing. She was going out, or maybe she had to work. I can't remember. But my dad ended up babysitting me, and we built like a train set on the floor, and we wrestled around, and I guess I headbutt him pretty hard and hurt him. But that is like the extent of the memories of my father, and and there's other things. I guess my dad's side of the family, once they knew I lived there, I remember one night everyone visited me in the middle of the night, or night for a kid, whatever, and they took me to like a van, and my mom was there, and everybody was just surrounding me, oohing and ahhing, as I guess, here's his kid, I remember that, and I remember being like half asleep and like, what the hell's going on? But it was because I guess they all found me, and that was that. Not my in-laws, my his side, my dad's side of the family. Um, every time I talk to them about my father, they always said things that, he's a good person. He got in the wrong crowd, or he got involved with the wrong people, or he followed the wrong people, whatever the case may be. Um, he was in prison my whole life, from what I knew, and then one day he was just there, and I just couldn't connect the dots. And then the next minute, like not even probably the same year, because I was still in kindergarten. Um, he was dead. Like he died. He passed away, and it wasn't natural. It wasn't bad health. It was poor decisions. Um, he I guess, I don't know, gangbanger or in the wrong crowd, whatever you want to call it. All I know, it had something to do with um, with people that were supposedly his friends, and it had something to do with that and drugs, and he ended up getting killed. That's all I know. It just felt weird. I know I must not understood at the time. I must not really grasped who he was, because I just couldn't wrap my mind around it, until I got older. And then a lot of this is convoluted. It's just, I'm 35 now, and I'm just getting ready to open up and talk about it. And kindergarten was hard. A lot of kids, they mock you for not having a dad, and a little chubby, I guess, and kids tease and ridicule you, and they're just kids, but at the time it hurts. Being it's so important to have your dad around. It's so important to know who he is. It's so important for a kid to understand, because it gives you so much confidence. I just always remember feeling just sad and broken, and I see I have two boys now, and I see my sons, and when I'm around, they're so confident. They're so strong. They're so much stronger. They have, and they really have me to lean on if they have any dealing with other kids or boys, or you know just how to be a good man. You know, I thought as I got older that and I thought as not just getting older, just having a family and having kids, that I would get better and heal and not be connected to that part, or care as much. But the more time I spend with my kids, and the more I care, and the more I try to be there and give them the best life I have, I think I get more. It hurts more than it ever did, and I'm 35. Because I know what you're supposed to get, what you're supposed to give, and I didn't get that. It was taken from me, robbed from me, never given a chance, whatever you want to call it. It just wasn't there. And I see the man I want to be for my kids, and I see how it affects my kids, and I think to myself, how can you not want to be better? How can you not get your shit together? Um, how can you not want to just be the best version of you can be, and be there, and have a steady, legitimate lifestyle? I just, it's beyond me. It really is beyond me, because I can't do anything less. Every time, any action, any negative thought, or any crazy whatever I may have, I always have to think about my kids and how it'll affect them. And I just, it hurts. And I've been to my dad's, his grave, his tombstone, and I think every time I've been there, I've probably yelled, I've probably cried, I've probably called him every name in the book. There's so much anger there um, for what his actions, or lack of action, whatever you want to call it, just not being there. There's no excuse. So, all you dads out there, you need to know that you are important. You I don't care what these days with these. identity politics and this ism and that ism, feminism, racism, nationalism, but all this crap going on right now in the world where everybody that used to strive to be equal strives to be elevated and get more attention. In this day and age, you could probably get away with not having a parent and not, or just having a single mom, and everyone would be like, "Yeah, we got this." That good for her, good for her. She's holding it down. She don't need no man. She's a strong woman. She's a feminist. But back then, it wasn't like that. People would just be like, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with your family?" It's not the same as it is now. Back then, people were cruel. Even my own family, on both sides, in their own way, have been cruel. They may never understand it. They might not even realize it. But you know when you're an outsider. You know when you're alienated. You know when people view you differently. Whether you're not the same, maybe because your portion of your family, your branch of your tree is a little broken, or maybe it's this different, economic status. They treat you differently. They look at you differently. And those are things that you don't forget. Anyway, this is kind of a part one of that. At least I'm calling it. I don't know what to do with this. I might not even post the video, but it's been heavy on my heart, and life isn't fair. Life is painful, or can be. But that's why I try to be the best version of myself for my kids, my wife. I'm not perfect, but I try. I would never do anything harmful for them or myself. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment if you have any feedback. If you want me to continue on, there's more of these I can do. Trust me. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Thanks for watching. Peace. Kids calling me now.